Picking up a proper camera for the first time can be quite intimidating. From manual settings to lens selection to composition techniques, there is so much stuff to learn. But today, let's have a look at your camera shooting modes and see what those different modes actually do and when to use them. Let's get into it. So, depending on your camera, there might be a lot or just a few shooting modes in your shooting mode selector, but there are 4 that will appear on pretty much every proper camera out there. And those are full auto, shutter priority, aperture priority, and full manual. So let's take those one by one and see what each one of them actually does and when to use them. So full auto is the mode that pretty much every beginner should start with. It'll be pretty much the same as shooting with your phone or a point and shoot camera, where the camera takes care of all the settings with the information that it's getting from the scene and judges what the best approach to the photo would be so that it's correctly exposed. And that's it. It is your point and shoot mode. But since you now have a camera that can properly adjust its settings, or that allows you to properly adjust its settings, using auto will pretty much cripple you and your camera in terms of what sort of photos you can take. And that's why you really want to upgrade out of the full auto mode pretty much as quickly as you can. And as soon as you feel comfortable just holding your camera, you just start looking into the other 3 modes mentioned here. Shutter priority gives you control of one of the key points in the exposure triangle, shutter speed. If you want to learn more about the exposure triangle and the basics of these manual settings, you can check out my video in this corner up here. But as a brief summary, shutter speed allows you to control how long the shutter stays open, giving you control over how motion appears in your photos. A low shutter speed will increase motion blur in your photos and really accentuate the appearance of motion. One example on where you might want to use this to accentuate that motion is when you're trying to take photos of light trails or just doing light painting. If you don't know what that is, it's pretty cool. It's photos like these. And on the other hand, a high shutter speed will allow you to freeze motion. So when you're trying to take photos of something that is in motion and you want that to be sharp and in focus, then you're going to need to use a high shutter speed. So if you're photographing things like animals or cars or, well, yeah, anything that is in motion, you want to use a high shutter speed. But how about when you want to control the focus of the photo? Switching over to aperture priority now gives the camera back its control over the shutter speed, but now it gives you the control of the aperture of the lens, which is another corner of that exposure triangle. With aperture, you will be able to adjust how deep the area that is in focus in that photo will be. Meaning a lower aperture or a wider aperture, aka a lower f number, will mean that the area that is in focus will be more narrow, and a high aperture or a small aperture, aka a high f number, will mean a more deep area of focus. So great examples of this comes in terms of portrait photography and landscape photography. In portrait photography, you usually want a wide aperture, aka a small f number, because you want to create that separation between the subject and the background, giving you that beautiful blurry background look in your photos, or bokeh. With landscapes, on the other hand, you want that plane of focus to be deeper, because you want more of that landscape to be in focus. So you need to make that aperture smaller, aka the number bigger, so that the plane of focus is bigger. Still following me here? It's a bit complicated, but again, if you want to see another way to explain it, you can check out that camera basics video that I did. But when you start getting to grips with these concepts, you want to start switching over to that manual photo mode. In full manual, you control everything. Essentially, you control the shutter speed and the aperture, and you become the master of your own photography. With now you being in charge of all the settings, well, you decide how that photo looks, for better or for worse. In full manual mode, it becomes vital that you understand how that exposure triangle works, and you understand what those settings do, since it's completely up to you now to get that photo not overexposed or underexposed, but to expose it correctly. But not only are you now responsible of the exposure, you also have all the control to do all of those creative ideas that you wanted to do that you couldn't do with the other modes. It is important to get comfortable with those last 3 modes in particular. And if you're not feeling up to going for manual mode yet, and you're not entirely sure of what those settings do, then that is exactly why you should use either Aperture Priority or Shutter Speed Priority, because that is the way that you learn what those do. Just remember that your camera has a lot to give you, so don't cripple it by leaving it on auto mode. And if you're shooting on auto and the photos are not looking as great as you'd expect or hope, well, it's most likely not the camera's fault. The camera could give you amazing photos, but auto mode is a handicap. That is all that I got for you this time. Thank you so much for watching. Please do me a favor and click that like button, and consider subscribing to the channel for more photography and videography and camera content. And also, hey, if you're up for it, say hi in the comments. We can have all sorts of chats there. If you have any questions, also leave them down there. But other than that, have a great rest of your week, and I will see you all next time. Okay? Bye!